The ideas expressed in the following presentations are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of ACI or its committees. ACI web sessions are recorded at ACI conventions or other concrete industry events and will be made available for viewing free of charge for 1 week. Thereafter, they will be archived on the ACI website or added to ACI's online CEU program, depending on their content.
Hi everybody, I hope you can hear me and see me. My name is Mike Ciocco. Thanks for having me this afternoon and sticking around. I hope the weather's nice out there in Reno. We're preparing for a nice cold storm back here in South Jersey. So today my plan is to talk about strategies to strengthen online course instruction. And I know I don't have a lot of time, so I'm really going to just focus down on a couple of what I hope are good examples for you. I'm the Director of Online Services at Rowan University. I run our unit that develops online classes for online programs or summer offerings or sometimes J-term offerings. And we're charged with seeking new enrollments and bringing revenue into the university. And we've been doing it since about 2006. So for our presentation today, I wanted to start out talking about where is online learning going. And if you do a survey of the literature, what you find from either the Sloan C surveys that are done at higher ed institutions and from different organizations, we're affiliated with a couple such as EduVentures and the Education Advisory Board that we do a lot of research with, or they provide us with reports regarding mostly higher education institutions, sometimes community colleges, which are not necessarily compare with us. We're a 4-year school, but we like to see what the trends are. And of course, from the literature, looking at public, nonprofit, for-profit, degree-bearing institutions, what we sort of found is that everybody's doing online in one form or another, whether you're trying to attract new business or just meet the demands of today's students, whether it's grad students, undergraduate online students. Somebody somewhere is probably taking some form of an online course at your institution. And what we see here from the numbers is really just about 90% of institutions are offering some type of online course. A lot of them, the vast majority, are offering some kind of program or prepping to offer an online program. And most of them have recognized that online is some type of strategy that you plan to make money with or plan to attract new students with. So a lot of us have been doing this. A lot of us, we've been out there and we've been collecting students. We've been offering online courses. And for example, at Rowan since 2006, a lot of our instructors have said, I'm used to this. And quite frankly, just putting things online is not keeping the students interested or not bringing in those double-digit enrollment numbers that it once was. We can't just steal a lot of business from other places or the other universities out there just because we throw a program online. So now the shift is towards pedagogy, towards how do I improve my instruction? And more importantly, a lot of our instructors want to know very specifically, how do I increase engagement in my online courses? And when I'm talking about engagement, I'm not just talking about what a lot of people think is interactivity. I have to have online gaming, and I have to have things that keep my students busy and constantly typing away and chatting and doing all kinds of things online. But rather, the strategies that I'm interested in today and I want to share with you are those that convert your student from a passive online learner to a involved online learner, somebody who takes part of the learning experience, takes control of it, if you will, and makes it happen in your class. And these little couple of strategies I'm about to show you will help you do that. They're easy to implement, and they're generally agnostic to the LMS. One thing at Rowan University we've flip-flopped learning management systems over the past few years, and specifically my group, where we are dedicated to developing courses for new online programs. We really are always looking for the next best thing, and since we're interested in the technology trend, we try not to entrench ourselves too deeply into the technology. So what I'm going to show you today can be done just about anywhere on any type of general online learning environment, and you should be able to do it almost instantly. So let me show you what my goal is. And my goal is, again, to provide you some enhancements to your course, specifically creating some student-centered activities that take the student and put them in the driver's seat, make them an active participant, make them drive the content, make them ask the questions, interact with you as the instructor, not necessarily in real time, and then again also with the other students in the class, and not necessarily in real time, but rather than just being readers and absorbers of content and submitters of individual assignments, they become very active participants in this class. So I have 3 strategies I hope to show you by example. The first strategy is a collaboration assignment. It's an easy assignment that you can give. It can be done, say, in 1 week's time or over the length of an entire course. Perhaps if your course plays out over a whole semester or trimester, you can implement it up front and have the students do it throughout the entire course. And we'll dig into that one in a second. The second strategy is what I call a casual Twitter-style discussion. We're all probably used to that online forum, the discussion board that you can get into and post a message, and your students probably spend a significant amount of time working offline to craft the discussion that they want to post. And we find that students will actually do a lot of research. They'll go on the web, they'll look up lots of things, and they'll come up with these great, how do I want to say it, well-researched, very in-depth discussions. But it creates a formal conversation rather than a casual conversation. So to sort of simulate what happens in the classroom, and when you're in that brick-and-mortar classroom and you have a restricted amount of time and everybody is just going to sort of raise their hand and just say what's on the top of their head, that's a casual conversation, and we're going to try and recreate that in this Twitter-style discussion. And the last is a more complicated example of what I call an a la carte course that caters to the individual and his or her learning needs. So let me jump in, because I don't have a lot of time, and I'm almost halfway through my time, and let me go ahead and show you some of the examples. So the first one is what I call a collaboration assignment. And here the idea is to use some type of collaborative tool. So you've all seen wikis, perhaps, in your learning management systems. This is readily available, and that's one tool you could use. And the tool I'm going to use is actually Google Documents, because Google Documents are essentially a wiki, and they're free, and they do integrate with a lot of learning management systems, or if not, you don't even have to use a learning management system. Your students can have, most of them will have Google accounts. If they don't, they could sign up for them, and you could hop on. But the idea behind this is it creates a collaborative workspace, and the students will be the people driving the content. They'll be the one creating your content for you. And you are really just, as I say here, a referee. You hop in and perhaps provide a comment once in a while. Perhaps you give some insight or feedback to what's going on in the assignment, but you're not really driving the assignment. Remember, in the classroom, when we have engaging activities in real time in the classroom, as instructors, we drive the assignment. We stand up front, we call on people, we say who can talk in turn, and we sort of curtail the experience. But in an online setting, especially something that's an assignment that plays out over an entire week or for a longer period of time, we don't curtail that. We allow it to go, and we only sort of want to wrangle it up when it's really going out into left field, or if the students need to be refocused, or if we need to drive a point home. But we are just guides. We are not really the drivers of the conversation. So the example that I'm going to give is sort of a course study guide. Other ways you could do this is by having a course glossary of terms or a course timeline. If you were a course that was chronological or historical, you'd be able to have students work on a course timeline. But the example I'm going to show you is a study guide. And the key to success in this is the delivery medium needs to be fast and easy to use. So if you can set this up really easily in your LMS, that's great. Or if not, I recommend something like Google Docs. So here, and if I can, I'm actually going to jump into the actual Google Docs so you can see it. But here's sort of a 30,000-foot view of a Google Doc. And if you've never seen one before, they're really just Word documents, or like a wiki. You just get into it like you would Microsoft Word, and you have editing tools just like Microsoft Word. But you have these other really rich features that allow real-time collaboration. And in this assignment, the faculty member or the instructor for the course can actually hop in and say, okay, I'd like you to get online, and every student is responsible for picking some important point from the chapter to serve for the study guide for the week. So since every student has to post something, they're all involved, and they decide what's going to be their study guide. It's like they're creating their own personal study guide. And as part of doing this, you'd hope they pick something important to study from. And hopefully they look at each other's work and they start to decide from that, if somebody's made a mistake or has left out something really important, they can work on that together. So I'm going to stop sharing that, and I'm going to share my screen. And let's hope this works really quick. All right, well, I'm going to let that go, and I'll keep talking. I'm very sorry. I apologize. So what I can do is talk from my example, and that's why I put pictures. I put pictures in here because not everything comes to fruition when you're live and in a timed session. So as you can see here, what I really want to point out, and you can follow my little green arrow, over here, the students can comment back and forth. They can highlight different sections of the work, and they can collaboratively make changes. So I can make changes to your work. You can make changes to my work. The instructor can make changes. And as part of doing that, we can make comments about the changes. And then comments are sort of nested. So they're not just sort of like you're used to maybe if you've never used this, but maybe you've used the comments feature in Microsoft Word, where you can highlight some text and make a comment. But this allows you to make replies within the comment. So now you sort of start a conversation. And so you can see here is clearly an initial comment followed by a reply. And here's an initial comment I made, and another student replied. So we can go back and forth and hash this out. And we can ultimately, if you could see here, mark this comment as resolved. So it can go away when we're done with it. The other thing you don't see here that I would have loved to show you in real time is every single change is tracked. So we can go back and look at the revision history, and we can see who made what changes where. So if I come back and I see, somebody's edited my work, or so-and-so's left a comment for me, I can track all those changes. So now I've created a live document, a living document that my students can collaborate to create. They work together. Imagine if this was a glossary of terms. You could tell every student you have to pick one term from the chapter or from my lecture and go each week and add that term from this week's lesson, and they start to build this lexicon or glossary for your class over time, and they collaborate together to make it a great experience. It's not something that you put together for them. You didn't spend a lot of time trying to generate this document. They build it, so it's very personal to them and something that they put together and were engaged in crafting for you. So the next one is the Twitter-style discussion. So really the Twitter-style discussion is a sort of my take, something that I've been trying to work with some faculty to bring to light. And it's based on some different things I've seen out there, so I won't take full credit for it. But some people can actually use Twitter in their learning management system, or they get their students involved in Twitter. But that involves some different logistics. The students either have to have a smartphone with Twitter or get Twitter set up on their computer. They might have to have an account to participate. This is a way that we just use the tools readily available to us, the discussion tools, but we craft the discussion in such a way and we set certain boundaries on the discussion that makes it more casual and informal. So the strategy is really to create a informal chronological classroom discussion. And when I say chronological, if you've ever seen discussion boards where they're threaded, where there's that nested style replies, this eliminates the nested replies. This says, we're not going to bother with that. What you see is what you get. In the classroom, when we have a discussion, we talk in turn, right? Nested discussions or threaded discussions are not discussions necessarily in turn. There is sort of a one at a time, but multiple conversations are going on in that discussion at the same time because there's multiple threads and people are replying back and forth, and it's hard to keep track of what's going on, especially if it becomes very lengthy and there's a lot of students. But in a blog, let's say, which is a chronological discussion, a non-threaded discussion, you only see reply after reply after reply, and they're not necessarily nested. And by de-nesting or decoupling them, we simulate what happens in the classroom, which is people talk in turn. You raise your hand and you say something, or if you don't raise your hand, you call out and you say something. But still, typically, other people won't speak over top of you. We all listen while one person speaks, and then another person reacts to that. And typically, another part of the conversation when we're face-to-face is that we don't tend to refer back in time. We refer immediately back in time. So if Billy and Bobby are having a conversation and Bobby's talking, and then Billy immediately responds to Bobby, but Billy doesn't go back and say, hey, 3 hours ago when Anna was talking, I want to follow up on what she said. That's a little unlikely. Bobby tries to advance the conversation, and Billy tries to advance the conversation. So we try to set up rules around the discussion that says it's not threaded. You have to be pretty concise. So you can't go make that long, well thought out, well planned, term paper style response on the discussion board that I mentioned earlier. A little bit earlier I said we know that the students go out, they do research, they carefully craft what they're going to say on your discussion board. In fact, we actually often get feedback or anecdotal information that our students will type up their lengthy discussion in Microsoft Word and then come back and post it into the learning management system. That's not what I want. I want what's off the top of your head, because in the classroom, that's what I get. I get what's off the top of your head for better or for worse. So the real-time discussion translates into this asynchronous discussion where we limit the amount of characters or the amount of words allowed in the post, and that's what makes it that real Twitter-style discussion. It's like a tweet. Tweet's only 140 characters, so in this case, we say 140 characters approximately, or 35 words. And you might want to limit the number of posts per user. So maybe you don't want a user making 30 posts in a row and chewing up the real estate on your discussion forum. And the discussion should be born of the lecture and other content. So initially you want to have some starting point of what the topic is. So some examples might be a question or debate that you pose, similar to a discussion but much more informal. It might actually only hit on a very small point, so rather than this large argument that they have to think about and reflect on and spend a lot of time doing some research and coming back, it should be something really quick. Watch this 5-minute video, this lecture that I have, the last sentence that I said, what do you think about that? Respond to a question about a film clip, or maybe have an icebreaker. Some keys to success are to ensure that the conversation stays casual. Students learn to be concise and we enforce that conciseness with the character or word limit. And lastly, we want to stress that they should advance the topic. So how do we do this? So I'm going to show you. Here's an example of LMS, and in the LMS I've set up the discussion. And unfortunately I can't show you the examples in the discussion, but I can show you how it's set up. So here, if we take a look at how I've done this, I've said for this discussion board, the class will actually have a Twitter-style discussion. And I've made some rules. And the format is going to be a casual conversation. You should avoid texting style, abbreviation, and emoticons, but we don't have to be very formal. We don't have to write long, lengthy sentences. We can just sort of get right down to the point. I said that the posts are unthreaded. So the students must post in chronological order, and I call that blog style. Blog is in chronological order. and the post should be limited to 140 characters, approximately 35 words or less. And we will make it clear that a URL, can sort of count as one word or one character. So if they want to post a quick link up in there, like a lot of people do with tweets, and in tweets the software is sort of gray on that. So as you start to type something out and you dump a URL at the end, it can be a very long URL and it doesn't count against what you tweeted. So we'll allow that here. And lastly, when posting, we want you to only reference the very last post. So if you want to immediately reply to somebody, you immediately reply to the very last post. Or if tweets just start to filter in, then you sort of lose your chance to reply, and instead you have to recraft your response to sort of advance the conversation. So instead of me saying, yeah, that was a great thing that Billy said 20 minutes ago, instead I have to say, sort of introduce the topic and then add my spin to it to advance the conversation. Theme, in this one you could see my example, watch lecture 1 about gifted and talented students, and then in the conversation discuss how are gifted students similar to students with impairment or disability. So a lot of this comes up in cases of special needs students where often there's, for example, autistic students or students suffering from Asperger's that are extremely smart. And then there's students that are gifted without Asperger's. So how can we correlate, what's similar between them, what's very different? And we have this nice brief conversation. We could quickly talk about, that they're often sort of isolated or individualistic or things like that. And we don't have to have this well thought out plan. We can just talk about it just like we would in class. And then we have, deadlines and grades. And one thing I would really say about this, especially if you're dealing with undergraduate students, especially students that are freshmen or sophomores, always make it count for something. Always offer a grade and actually grade this. If you don't, what will happen is there's no consequence, so why should I bother and why should I follow the instructions? So I know I'm starting to run out of time. So my last strategy is pretty simple top-down strategy, and that is to try and customize your class. One way to do this, to offer an a la carte class, is to allow some content that students can sort of test out of or skip around. Maybe they can just take a quiz instead of actually having to do several assignments and discussions. I've seen this example, for example, in like a class that was on finances and economics, and some students had, say, statistics or microeconomics, and that information was redundant for them, while other students were coming from another major and they hadn't had it, so it was new for them. So the students who had it were allowed to skip out of it, and the students who hadn't had it had to go through all the material and the assignments and take the quiz. But those who skipped out of it, those who could test out or move on, they weren't completely off the hook. They were required to collaborate with and assist those students who hadn't done it before. So you might post a discussion board for question and answer and tell every student you're required to respond to 2 students throughout the week and provide them support, or at least do this once. So the keys to success are, provide this collaboration space, and then make sure that these students have a way to work together, and enforce, maybe with grades or something, that those students who skip out and have an authentic learning experience say, I already know this, so I can just test out. They still are involved in the class and working with the other students, and this creates different levels of engagement based on who you are and what your role is in this class. It also creates a very personal experience for you in the class because, again, you're in the driver's seat. You say what you learn, when you learn, how you learn it, who helps you, and that's really the key to that. So there's lots of other things we could do. Peer review, just like we're doing right now, webinar, conferences, use things like Google Hangouts, Join.me, Adobe Connect, have guest speakers, presentations, allow students to collaborate using the tools. Video-only discussion. I know in my LMS, you don't have to type out in the discussion. You can actually use your webcam, and you can instantly record your discussion. So it's kind of a cool idea. Some of our professors are able to say, no typing for this discussion. Just use your webcam, and you have to make a recording and limit the time of the recording. And it just makes a more interesting type of discussion. You might have used office hours chat sessions. We think that's kind of cool. Students like that, to get on in real time and chat with the professor or each other. And then the flipped online classroom. So the idea of, you teach me something, you create the lesson, you create the video teaching us how to do that. So I know I've gone through it about 1,000,000 miles an hour, and it's probably a good thing I couldn't get into the LMS to actually show you. It wouldn't share my screen, couldn't show you that. But if anybody has questions, I'm happy to take questions at this time. And please download my PowerPoint slides, and I have some great references and information there for you. And if anybody wants information, you can email me later. I'll be happy to send it to you.